Hello, good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. See another person logging in, so I just like to give them another minute before we begin, another few seconds. Okay, we have a lot of material to cover in the hour, so I'd like to begin. This is the Intermediate AutoTag Training Webinar. Today is Wednesday, April 18th, 2018. My name is Eric Johnson, and I will be your Windward training facilitator today. I'm a technical support engineer here at Windward Studios. I've been here for a few months now. Maybe you've interacted with me through some help tickets. You may have noticed that when you logged into the GoToMeeting webinar, you have a toolbar. The arrow that you see on the screen is put into the raise your hand icon. If any time during the webinar you have a question or are experiencing any technical difficulties, please feel free to click that button to ask your question or to notify me of anything that's wrong. The prompts I have for questions and chats are on my other screen, so I may not see your question immediately. Usually I wait until the Q&A session at the end to answer questions, but I'll look now and again to see if anything has been raised. Again, this is the Intermediate AutoTag Training webinar. We are assuming that you've built some templates. They could have been very simple templates, that you've installed AutoTag, that you know how to use tags, that you know how to connect to your data source. You know enough about AutoTag to get you started. And you may have joined us last week for the AutoTag Basic Training webinar. For the machine I'm working on today, I'm using Windows 10 operating system, which is 64-bit. I'm also using Office 2016, also 64-bit. And the version of AutoTag that I'm using is 15.2.250.0. Now, I believe we have a new release coming out this Friday. It's our next targeted support release. But right now, the most current version is 15.2.250.0. When the new version does come out, you can download that through our downloads webpage off of our Windward website. Okay, I want to give you a high-level overview of what we'll be discussing today. I'll go over some advanced features for the for each tag. We'll discuss conditional formatting, covering two types of conditional formatting. One where we'll show or hide content using AutoTag tags, and a second type of conditional formatting that formats output based on conditions. We'll go over the equation editor, where I'll show you how to add the sum function to a template. We'll discuss the if and switch tags and what the differences are. I'll show you an example of the import tag, and of course, the Q&A session at the very end. Okay, the for each tag. So the for each tag, let's just review what it actually does. It does three things. First, it grabs a set of data, any set of data that you want to pull from your data source. Secondly, oh, sorry, I had a beep in my ear. Sorry about that. So the for each tag, it does three things. First, it grabs a set of data, any set of data that you want to work with, that you want to pull from your data source. Second, it loops through that set of data that you selected to work with. And third, it repeats all of the elements between the tags. I'll also show you the importance of where to place the beginning and ending for each tag, and show you the results of placing these tags in different ways. And we'll also get into grouping data or nesting for each tags, and I'll show you how to group your data with these for nested for each tags. Okay, what I like to do now is I'm going to minimize this PowerPoint presentation and open up a Word document. Okay, I'm going to open up a blank one. Now, when you install AutoTag, you get two ribbons, the AutoTag and the AutoTag Manager tab. And in both of those tabs, you'll have this sample button. This is where we're going to begin the webinar today with the live demonstration. So I'm going to go ahead and select this samples, and this opens up your Getting Started guide. And over here in the samples template section, down here under the additional, we have a few tag tutorials for SQL and XML. SQL being the most used, XML the second greatest used, and JSON the third. But for today, we're going to go ahead and focus on the SQL tag tutorials. We're going to begin with looking at the for each tag sample. It's right up here, first row, fourth from the left. I'm going to go ahead and click this to open it. So for the moment, we're going to focus on this first sample here, the for each tag without a table. It is possible to use the for each tag without a table. Yes, it is, as you can see here from the sample that's set up. And below this is a for each tag that does have a table. So what I want to point out here is a couple of things. One, where you place this beginning and ending for each tags, and two, why the placement is important when you loop through the data. So before we do anything else, I want to go ahead and select this for each tag and come up to the AutoTag tab and click this preview button to see the data that we're working with. Okay. So here we're returning from the categories table, the category ID, category name, the description, and picture. Okay, that's what we're getting for this from this for each tag. So what is the alt tag that's next to this for each tag returning? Let's go ahead and select that. Let's click preview. Okay, we're going to be pulling the category IDs from the categories table and displaying it in this alt tag. Now what's this second alt tag doing? Let's go ahead and select it. Come back up here, click preview. Okay, the second alt tag is just bringing in the category name from the categories table. So we'll be displaying beverages for one example. And lastly, we have our end for each tag right here below. So I'm going to go ahead and click output so you can see what this output will look like. Okay, I'm going to split the screen so we can see both the template and the output. All right, so here you go. You'll notice that we're just showing the category ID, as we showed you here, a dash, and the category name. And each of these categories are ending up on different lines. As you can see here, we have one line for beverages, one for condiments, one confections, and so on. So how does this actually happen? Why is it inserted in the next record on the separate line? I'm going to go back here to the template for a minute, and the reason why is that we've added the for each tag, right? The end for each tag on the very next line after the alt tag. So there's nothing after this alt tag, all this white space. Then the ending for each tag is on the next line. So to illustrate this a little more, I'm going to go up here to the Home tab, turn on the Show Hiding, all right, let me go and get that back. There we go. All right, so you can see what's happening a little more closely. Right after this last alt tag is the paragraph marker. So we're providing a carriage return after the alt tag, so we can add the end for each tag just below it on the next line. What happens if we took away this carriage return? Let's remove it so we can place that end for each tag right after this final alt tag. So what will the output look like now? Close that. Let's go ahead and generate it. Yes. Split the screen. All right, now the output looks very different. Immediately after this first record, it starts the second record. There isn't even a space. When it gets to the end of the margin, it goes on to the next line and carries on. So as we remove that paragraph marker, this is why it's lining up on the exact same line for each of these categories, why it's displaying the category ID, the hyphen, the category name, and then it continues on immediately to the next record. Again, this is why it's lining up this way on the line. So let's go ahead and change this back. Okay. All right, before we move on, I like to point out the tag tree button up here in the AutoTag tab. There's this tag tree button. I'll go ahead and click it, and it opens up over here on the right, the tag tree. So this is a very helpful tool, especially when you're reviewing templates that you haven't seen before. It lets me know all the tags that are in this template. If I expand on this main story, so main story is for the main document. Tags within headers or footers would display separately, but for tags that are just in the main template, you'll see them listed under here in the main story. So here we have a bunch of for each tags. And I like to focus on this final one, this customer's loop for each tag. So another good thing about this tag tree, other than letting you know all the tags that are set up in it, if you double click any tag within this tag tree, it'll bring you directly to where that tag is in the template. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this customer's loop. And as you can see here, it brought me all the way down to this final customer's loop for each tag. So this can be very helpful when you're trying to locate a specific tag and you don't know where it is. It's in the template. You can come over here, click on it, and it'll bring you directly to that tag. So I'm going to expand on this customers loop a little bit and discuss its makeup a little. So what we have here is a for each customer's loop. It's for each tag, and this for each tag ends down here with this end for each tag. Now within the customer's loop, we have first displaying an alt tag, a company name alt tag, and then there's going to be another for each tag. This is our inner for each tag. After that, it's going to display one thing from the for each tag and then end this inner for each tag. Then it's going to move on to the end of the outer for each loop, this customer loop. So this is kind of the makeup of what we're going to be looking at here shortly. The one thing I do want to point out, which is unfortunate during the webinar, is if you are on any of the tags here, this tag properties window would normally display the query and the properties. It's a quick snapshot of attributes and queries that are set up for the tags. I've come to recently find out that during the webinar, for some reason, this part isn't seen. But if you look at your template, once you're done with this webinar and open up the tag tree, you will see down here a quick snapshot of the query and the properties. But for now, sorry, the webinar prevents that from displaying for some reason. So let's get back to the sample. What's going on here? So here we have this outer for each, as I was showing over here, this customers loop. And with this, we want to group some data based upon the company name. Let's go ahead and preview this customer loop to see what we're going to be returning. And here for the customer loop, we're just going to be returning the customer ID and the company name. So the next thing between this beginning and ending for each tag is this company name alt tag. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that and come up here and choose preview. And here, as it shows, we're just going to be displaying the company name. I use this preview quite often just to make sure that I'm always returning the information that I'm looking to be working with. So you may see me use that quite a bit during the webinar. So next thing, after this alt tag is another for each tag. This is our inner for each tag. Let's go ahead and preview this to see what we'll be returning here. All right, so it's returning all of the order IDs that pertain to this specific customer ID. So let's say you have a list of company names that you want to see all of their orders for. As it goes through the list, this is exactly what we're doing here. Based upon the customer ID, we're going to be displaying the orders. So let's go ahead and look at what we're going to be displaying this alt tag. Click on it, select preview. So here, as I mentioned, we're just going to be displaying all of the order IDs. So let's go ahead and take a look at how this will look when we generate the output. Click output, yes to save. Split the screen. I'm going to go ahead and close this tag tree. We don't need to see it right now. I'm going to scroll all the way down to where we've been talking about grouping for each tags. And here we go, right here. So we have our loop in the template over here. And over here, you can see the results of the loop. So what's happening is we got the number one, we got the company name, and then we have all the orders associated with that company name. Then it iterates, reaches this end for each, it goes back up to the customer loop, iterates through the next record, displays the company name, and then all of the ordered IDs associated. And it keeps on going all the way down until we run out of companies. So this number one here in the list, how is it repeating this number one for each of the companies? This is how we're actually grouping the orders under specific company names. So how did I tie this inner for each loop to this outer customer for each loop? Well, I'm going to go ahead and select this outer for each loop right here. And I want to point out up here in the for each tag properties, for each tag properties lets me know that I've selected a for each tag. I want to point out this variable, which has a var name 10. So this is the variable. This variable is what AutoTag uses to identify this for each loop. So let's just keep that in mind. Now let's go ahead and select this inner for each loop. Now come up here in the tag properties and click this wizards button. So, oh, I'm sorry, I was on the out tag. For each tag, here we go. So this opens up our SQL wizard. Click in this wizard button. And over here in the center are all the columns, all the data that we're returning from this for each tag. We're not going to be really focusing on this right now, so I'm just going to minimize this for the moment. But this is all of the data that this for each tag is working with. Okay, so how do we tie this inner for each tag with this outer for each tag? And we do this through the filter section right here. You can see that it's already set up for us. I'm just going to expand the table and the orders over here in the data tree pane. So what we're doing is we're collecting the customer ID from the orders table. And we're saying that if it's equal to the value from var name 10, and var name 10 was again this outer for each loop, and we're setting that equal to the customer ID of that. So here, since we have two keys, two primary keys that are identical in both the outer for each and inner for each loop, we can tie them together here. And this is how we can group data for the for each tags. So now if I click on this var name 10 customer ID, over here is a drop down. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And this here again, var name 10 is just the name for this outer for each loop. And here, these are all the things that I can connect to within this var name 10. And since we are trying to group tables, I'm going to use the customer ID. But these are all the things that we can connect to within this var name using this drop down. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And so over here on the right, you may have noticed in the data tree pane that there is a first customer ID right here. And these are all the order IDs that pertain to that customer ID. So this, in the filter section, this is how you connect your inner for each loop to your outer for each loop. Going to generate the output one more time, just so we can see it again. Split the screen. Let me scroll all the way down. All right, so here's the example. So now I want to just explain what is actually happening when we generate the output with the engine. Each AutoTag has a small .NET engine built into it. So what's happening is that our engine is completely strips out the data from your template, then collects all that data, and then rebuilds from scratch, from top down, everything that's in your template. So it shows the data that you wanted, and it displays it how you formatted it in your template. So what's happening here is that AutoTag collects all the data in this customer for each loop and all the data within this inner for each loop. It ties it together, and then when it produces the output, it says what's after this customer loop, and the first thing it comes to is this numbered list and the company name. Then what does it do? It sees this inner for each. So it grabs that data and it displays the alt tag for this inner for each loop. It will do this for all of the order IDs for this specific company. It will loop through it, showing everything between the beginning and ending of this for each tag. Then it'll go on and display the next record. When it comes to the end of the records from this inner for each loop, it will move on and it'll come across this ending for each tag, which tells the engine then to go back to the outer for each loop, collect the next record, and repeat the process. Display the number, list the company name, go through this for each loop, displaying all the orders, come down, once it's reached the last order, come to this end for each, go back and iterate again through the customer loop. So this gives you an idea of how the engine is tearing down your template and rebuilding it from scratch after pulling all your data from your data source. This is how you group your data using nested for each loops. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this output. So the next thing I'd like to show you before leaving this sample is on this page above, right here. So we've been creating for each tags using row-based formatting. We're now going to focus on how to create for each tags using column-based formatting. So the for each tag can be used for column major expansion. There are three things that are different when you want to create columns instead of rows. This example above, right up here, is typical when you're creating a row-based for each. So here we have the for each tags, a couple of alt tags in the different columns, and then the end for each tag outside of the table. But when we want to create column-based formatting, we do the setup a little different. So here, there's a for each tag within the table. We have the alt tag, and then the end for each tag is inside the table. Normally, it would be outside, but as we're going to be using column expansions, we have it inside the table. Let's go ahead and preview this for each tag just so we can see what we're going to be working with here. Okay, so here is just our categories table. Pretty familiar with that by now. Just going to be returning the category ID, category name, description, and picture. Okay, so what is this alt tag next to the for each tag going to be displaying? Let's go ahead and click it, choose preview. So here, we're just going to be displaying the category name, beverages, for an example. So instead of creating a list top down of the category names, we're going to go ahead and create columns left to right across the page. Let's go ahead and see what this output looks like right now. I'm going to scroll down to our column-based example. All right, here it is. So instead of going top down, like we could have seen from this table, this table right here, the normal for each loop is out, the end for each tag is outside the table in a normal setup, displaying the table row-based top down. But here, we're going left to right, expanding the table, creating new columns as we go across the page. All right. Okay. So typically, when we do place this N for each tag within the table, it would normally create a blank row here underneath our table, but it isn't doing it right now. Let's go ahead and look at why that is. I'm going to close the output for the moment, maximize the template. So there's a couple of ways to edit a tag. You can either double click a tag, or you can come up here and click on this edit tag button in the AutoTag tab. So I'm going to go ahead and do this right now with this for each tag. It's actually, we're going to select the N for each tag and go up here and click the edit tag button, because I want to show you why we did not display that last blank row. So the N for each tag is not used to query anything. As you can see, we're in the query tab right here, and there's not anything set up. The N for each tag is just used to tell AutoTag when to stop looping through the data and repeating those elements. But within the properties tag, there is this delete row attribute that I want to talk about for the moment. And this attribute is currently set to true. So this is why we're not showing that last blank row. We're going to suppress the row on output. Now, if I was to turn this off by double clicking, I'm going to save this. So now, what will our output look like? I'm going to go ahead and click output, yes to save. I'm going to split the screen. Let's scroll down to that column-based sample that we've been talking about. And here you'll see now, before we did not have this blank row, but now we do. And that's because we turned that property delete row for this N for each to false. So two things right now, N for each within the table and the delete row attribute set to false. The last thing we need to do to complete the column-based expansion setup is to change the property value for the for each tag to create columns instead of rows. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on our for each tag to open up the tag editor. So this would be the query, and the properties would have been what we've seen when we were looking at the tag tree. But that tag tree was just a small little snapshot. This tag editor window is a little more robust. We have a preview button here. When I click it, you can see the data that's being returned for this for each tag. Again, the categories table. There's a wizard button up here, just like the button on AutoTag tab to see my SQL wizard. There's an equation button, which I'll show you a little later, that adds an equation for the tag. Then there's the next and previous buttons, which can take you to the respective tags without actually exiting the tag editor. Over here on the left, just like in the data bin, there's our tables, views, and store procedures that we have access to. Back over here on the right, this in the query tab is our query window. Now your query window is probably white. If you right click within the window, there's this color scheme option. I'm using base 16 ocean dark. What I believe is normal is this plain option. But I want to go ahead and click in the properties tab right here. Now there's some advanced attributes for the for each tag, and then there's some standard attributes. But what I'd like to focus on right now is this order attribute right here. You'll notice that the ordered attribute is set to column. Now, if I click on this drop-down list, you'll see that you have a bunch of options: legacy, row, and column. Legacy is what is used by default. Legacy isn't much different from row. Legacy is the original way that you built the tag. The row attribute does a little more. If you want to delete a row with the end for each, you will have to use this row option. In our wiki, there is some more information on how legacy is different from row. But since we're expanding not by rows, but by columns, we'll want columns set for the order. So with columns selected and set, I'm going to go ahead and save the tag. All right, let's generate the output. And as you can see here, since we removed the delete last row, turn that to false, we have still the last row. So let's go ahead and change that back for the moment. Let's go ahead and open up, double click on the end for each tag, go to the properties, and let's change this delete row back to true. Let's save this, click output. And we saw a second ago the blank last row in the output. Now when I scroll down, by setting that delete row attribute to false, to true, as you can see here, now we are no longer displaying that last blank row. So 3 things when working with column-based tables. Make sure your for each tag right here is set to columns. The end for each tag is within the table, and the delete row attribute for this end for each tag is set to true. Okay, let's go back to the slides for the moment. So we've talked about legacy, row, column for each tag type. We talked about the delete row attribute, which deletes the row where the end for each tag is placed. We have over 50 equations or functions available for you to use. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of those. I'm going to open up a sample template which uses the sum function. Bring it over here, open to my other screen. So here, we're going to add a sum function to create a total of the sales amount for all of our salespeople. You can see here, this is just a regular sales table. There's this sales loop for each tag with a bunch of different alt tags for the salesperson, number of calls, leads generated, and the sales amount. Now, before we do anything, let's go ahead and take a look at this sales loop, see where the data that we're going to be working with. So up here in the AutoTag, I'm going to click Preview. So it's returning the same things that we're showing right here in the alt tag. We have the salesperson, calls number of calls, leads generated, and the sales amount. So before we add the sum function, I want to show you how to display red text for any salesperson not meeting a specific quota. Kind of give you like a real example of some way you may use this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and double click on this sales amount alt tag to open up the tag editor. So I'm going to expand this var1, and var1 is just the variable name for the for each loop, the sales loop. So I'm going to open up my properties tab. And over here in the tag section, there's this condition. Let's expand this so you can see a little better. All right. So there's an equation already set up for us. So if I go ahead and click on this condition field, you'll notice that there's the ellipsis over here at the end of the line. I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And this opens up our conditional formatting rule manager. So whenever you add an equation or whenever you want to evaluate data, you'll want to begin with an equal sign, as it's shown right here. After that equal sign, then we have this $sign and a squiggly bracket. Then we have var1, which relates to this sales loop for each tag here. And we're going to be looking at the sales amount. And for each sales amount, we're going to be checking if that amount is less than 8,000. So now, since we have our equation built, what if we want to format the data in a certain way, in a specific way? Well, if I know the formatting code, I can add that syntax right here in the format field. If I don't, I can go ahead and click on this wizard button, which opens up the format options. Here, you have the option to italicize, bold, underline, strike through the text. You can change the text color the back. And since we're working with tables, you'll see we also have this cell tab, which I can adjust the borders, give it a line style, a line color, cell color, alignment. Let's go back to the text tab. So for this example, we're going to change the color of the text to red for any sales amount less than $8,000. So we already entered here is the hex code for our text color. And this hex code right here is for the color red. Unfortunately, we don't have a color palette. That's something we want to add as an option. But for right now, you would have to enter in the hex code. You can Google that or talk to your designers. They would probably be able to give you that hex code. But as we want red, 2 F's and 4 zeros represent the color red. So for us, we wanted to format the text based on red color. We have that set up here. So I'm going to go ahead and click yes, okay. And again, here is our formatting for color for red. We could also go ahead and add a new rule if we wanted. We could delete it. So if we wanted more things to display, we have that option. But this is all I want to do is display those sales amounts that are less than 8,000 in red. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. I'm going to save the tag. Let's go ahead and click Output. See what we're looking. See what we're going to be displaying. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the formatting right now. We don't need to see this anymore. So you can see any sales amount that is less than $8,000 is now displayed in red. So this is one way to conditionally format an alt tag for output. All right, now let's go ahead and add a sum function. So what if we want to total all of the sales amounts within this table? How do we do this? So we'll need to create a new row in our table underneath this first row. So first I'm going to go ahead and select this end for each tag, come up here and delete it. Now I want to add a new row. So what I'm going to do is come down here and click this plus button to create a new row for myself. We're now going to do what I told you not to do earlier when it comes to row-based templates. And this is row-based because we're moving top down. And what I'm going to do now is add the end for each within the table. So I'm going to place my cursor right here in the second row in this salesperson's column. And go up here to the tags drop down. I'm going to add the end for each. So also want to make it a little easier to read. So let's go ahead and put some description of what we're going to be displaying. Let's going to display the total. So let's go ahead and add that. Let's format this text. Since we use over 90% of Word's functionality, I want to bold this, and let's go ahead and right align this. Okay, now I want to add an alt tag next to this total label right here under the sales amount. Go back to the AutoTag tab, tags, and add an alt tag. So now with this alt tag added, I want to go ahead and double click it to open up the tag editor. And this time, I'm going to click this equation button right here. And this opens up our insert functions window. Here, you have a list of categories, date and time, math and trig, statistical, database, text, logical. And since we're going to be working with the sum function, I'm going to go ahead and select math and trig. And that gives me just a shorter list of the functions to choose from. Since I know we're going to be working with the sum, and this goes in alphabetical order, I'm going to scroll down until we have the sum. Once I select that, you'll notice down here that there's a little description for this function that we're about to work with. So this sum function adds all the numbers in a range of values. So this is what we're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And then up here, here's the equation. We got remember we always start with an equal sign to evaluate. And then here is our sum function. And nothing between these parentheses at the moment. So let's go ahead and add to this equation. What is it that we're going to sum up? If we want, we could enter in the number, enter that in the number one field, what we want to sum up, or we can go ahead and click on this wizard button. I'm going to do that, which opens up the SQL wizard. Expand the tables a little and the sales, since that's the table that we've been working with. So we want to take all the sales amounts and total them up. We do that by just selecting it and dragging it in to the columns section right here in the middle. Now in the data preview pane, here we see all of the sales amounts, and this is exactly what we wanted to total. So that's all you have to do is just drag the sales amount to the column section. So I'm going to click OK. You'll now notice to the right of the number one field is the first value that's being returned. There's also a grand total down here. It's not formatted. But now up here, you can see that our sum function has some data in it. We're going to be selecting from the sales table the sales amounts. We're going to select the sales amount from the sales table. So this is exactly what we want to see. So I want to go ahead and click OK. Here's our query that we just built through the equation editor in this query tab right here. I'm going to go ahead and click Save. Since we're going to print out the number value, let's format the data. So I'm going to select this Alt tag, go up here, select the Alt tag to make sure I'm working with the whole tag. Click on the Format Data. And just like Excel, we can click on Currency. We want 2 decimal places. This is how we want negative numbers to display. So, okay, I'm going to go apply it, close. We can also go up here if it's selected. Let's go ahead and bold it as well. And let's look at the output now to see what we're working with. Click on this. So here's our table with the extra row. Since we added the end for each tag within the table, it's giving us this extra blank row, but we utilized that blank row, by adding the grand total for all the sales amount. So this is a great sample for showing how you conditionally format the text for certain values, and also adding a sum function, one of the many functions within the equation editor that you can utilize. I'm going to close the output. Okay. Notice the time I'm running a little behind, so I'm just going to try to get through this as quick as I can and not leave out anything. But I do notice the time, so I'm trying to move quick for you guys. So I'm going to go back up here into the samples. Now I want to show you conditionally formatting using if tags and switch tags. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the if tag tutorial, which is this one right here, 5th one. That's the number. And I like to, so this gives us a step-by-step instructions on how to utilize the if tag. But let's go ahead and look at this first example here, this if out if example. Now, the if tag is perfect when you want to show or hide specific elements within your template based on some condition within your data. So I'm going to go ahead and select this first if tag. Which is going to evaluate. So this first if tag is going to evaluate what's been set up. And if it's true, it's going to display this alt tag or anything between the beginning and ending if tags. If it's false, it's going to skip over everything in between the beginning and ending if tags and then display everything that comes after it until. So let's go ahead and take a look at this beginning if tag, see the data that we're actually evaluating. I'm going to go up and preview it. So in this tag, we're evaluating is 1 less than 2. This is a really simple evaluation. You'll probably use something more involved, but just for this example, we're just simply checking is 1 less than 2. Since 1 is less than 2, this is going to return true. So this means that we're going to display this alt tag right here. If this was false, then we would have skipped over the alt tag and gone on to the next thing. Now, let's look at this alt tag and what are we actually going to display? Okay, nope, still on the if tag, alt tag, preview, and here we're just going to display 1 is less than 2. Okay, now let's go ahead and take a look at the output. All right, so here we're just displaying simple text, 1 is less than 2. Okay, now let's look at this next example here. The output indicates that 3 is less than or equal to 4. Why is it showing this? So let's go ahead and preview this if tag. All we're doing here is evaluating, is 3 greater than 4? Of course, 3 is not greater than 4, so we evaluate the false. Since this first if tag is evaluating to false, AutoTag will skip this first alt tag and move to this else tag. It will then provide everything after the else tag, since this was false, to the end if tag, which is just this alt tag. Right now, we're just displaying a simple alt tag, but you could show or hide much more information. Say California needs to display more information than other states. You could use if tags to hide information for states that don't need it and display stuff for a state like California that would need it. So it doesn't matter what comes between the if and the end if tags. We're going to show or hide certain elements of your template based on this conditional formatting. So if we were to preview this alt tag, comes after this, and this is what we see here. 3, since this is false, 3 is less than or equal to 4, which is displayed right here for us. All right, So that's the if tag. So you'll want to use the if tag if you just have one or two conditions or choices that you want to evaluate. But if you have three or more conditions that you want to evaluate, you can use nested if tags, which you see right here, an if tag, an else tag. I'm sorry, an if, the else tag, here's another if tag, here's an else tag, and then here's the ending if. So this is how you would actually nest ifs. But if you're using three or more conditions, we would suggest using the switch case tags. Let's go ahead and take a look at an example of that. So back here, went to the samples, and then back in the getting started guide, we have a couple of switch tags. We have the switch tag and switch tag 2. I'm going to select this second one. So here we see another table containing what looks to be some sort of customer information. Let's preview this customer loop to see what we're working with. So here, we're returning customer ID, table, first name, middle, last. So we're returning quite a bit of information. Okay, and we're going to be displaying first name, and this from the cell tag, last name, address, city, state, postal code. This country column here is where we've added our switch tag. And all the switch tag does is just tell AutoTag when to start evaluating these case tags. So this right here, switch country, this is the beginning switch tag, and this down here is the ending. So in between here, we're going to evaluate all of these case tags. So these case tags is evaluating what looks to be the country. So it looks like if they belong to Canada, then display the Canadian flag. Well, let's just take a look to see what we're actually evaluating here. I'm going to go ahead and double click on this Canada case tag. It opens the tag editor. And so we have our equal sign, var1, which just refers to this customer for each loop. We want to look at the country region name from our customer loop and check if it equals Canada. If it does, then show the Canadian flag. We'll then do this for the rest of these countries. For USA, we'll check if the country region name is USA, and if so, display it. As soon as it meets one of the criteria in these case tags, it will exit this switch statement. It'll then move on to the next item in the list, which is this end for each tag, and then loop again, showing the specific flag for the next customer record. Let's go ahead and look at the output to see what we're actually going to show us. So the first record here for John Yang has an Australian flag, so he must be from a region of Australia. And as you can see, as we scroll down here, there are some other flags that we're displaying based upon the region of these individuals. We have the USA flags, some Australians and Canadians, some USA. So here we're evaluating 4 case tags. So there's 4 questions or conditions that we're asking to show or hide certain values based on this customer's country. So that's the switch tag. And I see we're a few minutes over. I have one more sample that I would like to discuss, and then we can open up for Q&A. I apologize that I have gone over a little, but we have one last thing to get through. Let's go ahead and go back to the samples. And this time, I'd like to discuss the import tag. We have, okay, a few different samples for the import tag. We have a sample for the import tag with the HTML, also a sample with the import tag with an image. But I'm going to go ahead and select the first one right here. It gives us a little of everything. So it looks like we're importing an image here. There's a PDF file that we're importing. We're also going to import in this template docx, some text file, and an HTML page. So you can import quite a bit of things. Let's go ahead and click the output so you can see what it looks like. Okay. Okay, so what you see right here in the template is just an image preview. This is actually a tag. If I was to double click it, it opens up the tag editor, and here you can see the address, the location of the image that we're displaying. So we didn't just put an image here. We are actually importing this, and we provide you with a little preview of what that image will look like. So you can see its size and layout upon output. You may have noticed that there's no additional content right here for the PDF input. And that's not because there isn't anything to input. The only way you can import PDF is by outputting to PDF. So if we were to output here to PDF instead of docx, what I showed you a moment ago, and you can see that we have imported some PDF. It's down here on the second page, but it's what we were looking to import. So if you want to import PDF, you must output the PDF in order to display that PDF import. All right. Again, sorry about this. Let's go back to the slides now. Opened up a lot of stuff. Okay, so I showed you the if tag and how it evaluates when it's true. It shows you everything between the beginning and ending if tags. If you have multiple evaluations or conditions that you're trying to check against, for instance, maybe 3 or more, you'll want to use the switch case tags. It's a little more elegant in seeing it. Okay, support resources. You may want to take a screenshot of this if you can while we're on this slide. Here are the resources that you can utilize. If you want to look up anything from our knowledge base, you can do this at wiki.windward.net. We're constantly updating the wiki. We're revamping it completely. So you may see a new wiki out in the next couple months or so. If you can't find what you're looking for, you can always reach out to our amazing support team at support.windward.net, or you can email them at support@windward.net. So if you have any questions that you can't find an answer to, you can go ahead and contact our support team. And if you want any changes or have any feature requests that you want added to the engine or AutoTag, you can do this at our ideas.windward.net site. All right. So there's going to be a survey at the end of the webinar. Please feel free to fill it out with any feedback. Any feedback that you can provide will help me and the attendees of the next webinar. But let's now go ahead and look at some of your questions. Okay, let me just review it. Okay, question I have is, can you use multiple equations on one tag? Yes, yes, good question. Yes, yes, you can. And in our example, I just showed you using one equation, the sum equation. But yes, you could if you, I had an example recently where a customer had to concatenate 2 bits of data from their data source. And then once that was concatenated, they had to encode it for URL use. The equation editor, I'm going to open this up quickly. The equation editor, let's go back to an example that we already have used. Okay. So if you can use the equation editor. Let's go ahead and double click on the sales. This was where we had the sum. So for the example I had, somebody needed to concatenate and then encode it. They weren't sure how to do it. So what I suggested is that they go ahead and come in here to the equation button. First, concatenate what they were looking to do. So come in here, use the concatenate function, enter in the values. So we're just making something up on this one. Let's concatenate the, let's just say, the salesperson for the first value and the sales amount. Okay, and so when you concatenate the first part, this will go ahead and give you the equation to do the concatenation. So what I did is I first had them run through this, select the data that they wanted to concatenate, make a copy of that. Then I'll do that over here myself. Then go into the equation editor, and they wanted to use encoding, URL encoding. Okay, so I had them choose that. And then you set this up as if they were going to use it. This is going to produce an error, but at least it showed them for the example they were working on, the data wouldn't return an error. But what they were to get out of it is this equation up here. So with that being said, I had them come back here, use the URL encode, and then within the parentheses, add the second equation. So right now, I'm going to encode, URL encode, this right here, which these 2 selects, which are being concatenated. So first, it will concatenate the salesperson and the sales amount. And then once that's concatenated, it will then URL encode the string. So good question. Yes, you can use multiple equations on one tag. All right. Well, that was the only question I had today. So thank you for joining. Sorry I went over a little bit. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And goodbye now.